Paul Robeson courageously integrated the sports team, but so did Jackie Robinson. Robeson brought Negro spirituals into our lives, but so did Bessie Smith. Robeson worked to have positive roles for Blacks in films, but so did Sidney Poitier. Robeson used his beautiful singing voice to connect us with global struggles for justice. But so did Harry Belafonte. Robeson used his celebrity to support union organizing, but so did Pete Seeger. Robeson inspired workers and students wherever he could find their audiences. So did Fannie Lou Hamer. Robeson refused to sing before segregated audiences, but so did the Beatles. Robeson visited and raised solidarity for the people of Africa and for all oppressed people, but so did Malcolm X. Robeson connected the struggle for racial justice with that against war. And so did Martin Luther King Jr. So what's the big deal about Paul Robeson? He did them first, and he did them all. I did not know of Paul Robeson, this great forerunner, when I was growing up in the 50s. And I didn't even hear about him or read about him when I started teaching in Compton and learning about as many Black people as I could. I only learned about him later when I started hearing about the activities of O'Neill Cannon's Paul Robeson Center and their successful campaign to get the U.S. Postal Service to honor his centennial with a commemorative stamp. Time magazine called him in 1943, probably the most famous living Negro. And a couple of decades later, in 1964, another writer called him the best known American in the world. So why is he so unknown today, at least in the US? The whole answer is that throughout the McCarthy era, even when he was before HUAC, he refused to back down from the campaign against fascism and racism for international socialism. Happy birthday, Paul. I see three different groups who were victimized by the Cold War. The first were those who were not communists, but were falsely accused of being so. These are the people we usually hear about and hear their stories. Those who are called its innocent victims. The second group were those who were accused of being communists and really were members or supporters of the Communist Party, as they had every right to be. For as Robeson bravely pointed out before he went, the first to die in the struggle against fascism were the communists, and it is a legal party. These avowed communists were just as undeserving of what they suffered. But the third group, victimized by McCarthyism, is the rest of us. For we ended up with our unions and our anti-war groups broken and still not fully recovered. With the era's Taft-Hartley Act still stifling labor organizing, and with our movies, poetry, novels, and other arts being less powerful than they had been previously. And those few artists who refused to be broken, like Robeson, were taken away from us and erased from our history. I believe we cannot consider the McCarthy era truly over until we, as a people, can say and hear the word communism without cringing, till we repeal the Taft-Hartley Act, until we reconnect our people with Paul Robeson. So I urge all of you to celebrate his birthday today by listening to some of his songs, as well as his testimony to HUAC. In his testimony, you'll hear a man who, instead of saying as little as needed to get by, used every moment to tell the committee off, including telling them, "You are the un-Americans and you ought to be ashamed of yourselves." In the chat, I put a link. I will put a link to my LA Progressive article, which is a slightly longer version of this reflection, and it includes a whole lot of links. Robeson paid the price for a stand. In one concert, they were violently attacked while the police watched. That was Peekskill that Michael mentioned. Venues where he'd been scheduled to do concerts canceled them, recording companies would not record him, and stores actually withdrew his records from their stock, all under threats from the government. Plus, for 8 years, he was denied a passport and was unable to perform abroad, even in Canada, where passports are not required. He was like a prisoner, could neither pass through the walls of the prison nor fully participate in the activities inside. During these 8 years, he was limited to doing concerts at places wherever people loved him and invited him to sing, including First Unitarian Church right here in LA. But Robeson also did some remarkable things during that time. 8 months after the opening of the transatlantic telephone cable, he performed a concert through it for the people in a London theater. And at the Peace Arch on the Canadian border, tens of thousands, mostly on the Canadian side, attended a Robeson concert as he performed it from the US side. When the Supreme Court finally restored his passport rights in 1958, I was 10 years old at the time, it established that the State Department could not deny us our right to travel on the basis of our political beliefs and our affiliations. Thank you, Paul Robeson. So let me conclude with this. Robeson, who did not write his songs, sometimes rewrote them. In the movie Showboat, he sang the lyrics to Old Man River as Hammerstein had written them. "That's the old man that I'd like to be. What does he care if the land ain't free?" But later, by adding the single word "don't," he changed it from Hammerstein's worldview to his own. "That's the old man I don't like to be. What does he care?" By the time he was singing the song at Peekskill and at Carnegie Hall, people no longer heard "tote that barge and lift that bale, get a little drunk and you lands in jail. I get weary and sick of trying. I'm tired of living and scared of dying. And Old Man River, he just keeps rolling along." Yeah. But instead, they heard this. Show a little grit and you land in jail. I must keep fighting until I'm dying. And Old Man River, you just keep going.